I never expected that the quiet skill I carried from childhood, listening to my grandmother whisper in German as she folded laundry, would one day expose the truth about the man I trusted the most. My husband had always believed I understood only English, and I never corrected him because it never mattered. It was just one of those forgotten family traits people assume you leave behind. But the day I overheard him speaking in German on the phone, thinking I couldn't understand a word, was the day the ground beneath my marriage began to split. His voice was calm but sharp, the tone men use when they believe no one is listening, and the words he used about me felt like blades slicing through the quiet of our home. I stood frozen, becoming an unwilling witness to the truth that had always been hiding in the open. And in that moment, I realized that the worst betrayals are rarely loud. They are quiet, calculated, and spoken in languages we aren't supposed to understand. For years, I thought we were a team. We built a life brick by brick with routines that looked normal from the outside. A shared morning coffee, long drives with the radio humming, weekend meals where he pretended he liked my cooking more than he actually did. But beneath that normalcy lay small cracks I ignored. The ones that formed whenever someone mentioned my background, my darker skin tone, my family's mixed heritage. He always brushed it off, saying people exaggerate, saying I was too sensitive, saying the world wasn't as cruel as I believed. And I wanted to believe him. But the truth is that I had swallowed so many subtle cuts that I stopped recognizing the taste of my own blood. And the man inflicting some of those wounds was the same man who held my hand at night. The day everything shifted began like any other. I returned home early, the sky still bright, the air warm. I walked quietly through the hallway, hearing his voice coming from the living room. I assumed he was talking to a friend or a coworker, but then I noticed he was speaking German. That alone wouldn't have mattered. He had German roots, after all. But what stopped me cold was the bitterness in his tone, the coldness in his voice, and the unmistakable way he talked about me. He described my family as different, my culture as incompatible, and my background as an inconvenience he tolerated. Hearing him speak about me as though I were some second-rate addition to his life made my chest tighten, until breathing felt like a battle. The words poured out of him so casually, so effortlessly, as if he had rehearsed them 100 times. He didn't know I understood every single word. I felt myself turning into stone as I stood there, absorbing each blow. Memories replayed themselves like old film. The way his mother scrutinized me the first time she saw me, commenting on my skin in ways that sounded polite, but felt poisonous. The way his friends always asked where I was really from, as if my passport wasn't proof enough. The way he always dismissed my experiences with racism, telling me not to make everything about race. It all came crashing together into one suffocating truth. He didn't just tolerate the racism around him, he participated in it. Quietly, comfortably, confident in the belief I would never hear the truth behind the language barrier he thought protected him. In the days that followed, I lived in a strange half-silence. I watched him move around the house, laugh, cook, sleep, completely unaware that the illusion had shattered. I noticed things I had overlooked before. The subtle irritation when I wore my hair naturally, the slight begrudging tone when he introduced me to new people, the defensiveness whenever I spoke about my experiences as though they were overreactions. The truth sharpened the world around me, and the longer I stayed silent, the clearer it became that this wasn't just a moment of anger he had voiced. It was who he was when he believed no one was listening. But what hurt the most was the revelation that he had been discussing me with someone else. Someone who agreed with him, someone who validated his beliefs, someone who encouraged him to rethink his marriage before it became too complicated. The weight of those words pressed heavily on my chest, because I realized that I wasn't just dealing with a husband who had spoken cruelly. I was dealing with a man who saw me as less than equal, and held resentments I never knew existed. A man whose prejudice wasn't accidental or unconscious. It was intentional. It was rooted. And it was growing in conversations I was never meant to hear. The more I listened in the days that followed, the more I uncovered. Each phone call revealed another layer of who he was when he thought he was unobserved. His frustrations. His assumptions. His judgments. He spoke about my culture as if it were a burden he carried, as if loving me required sacrifice he never signed up for. He talked about our future children with a tone that made my stomach knot, wondering whether he'd view them as his or as a compromise. And every time he opened his mouth in German, I heard the truth he had hidden in English. He didn't just misunderstand my experiences with racism. He dismissed them because he didn't. It took hours of sitting in silence, days of pretending I didn't know, weeks of replaying everything in my head before I reached the breaking point. The moment when I realized staying silent was not strength but surrender. I couldn't unhear what I'd heard. I couldn't unknow what I knew. And I couldn't spend the rest of my life beside a man who saw my identity as a setback and my heritage as an inconvenience. So I planned my next steps quietly. I began gathering important documents, saving money, preparing my exit without confrontation. But life has a way of pushing things forward before we're ready. One evening he made a remark, subtle, small, one he assumed would slide past me like so many others. Except this time it didn't. This time it ignited everything I had been holding inside. That night, I looked at him not as my husband, but as a man who had spoken about me like a stranger he barely respected. He didn't know I could understand him. He didn't know his own language had betrayed him. And he didn't know he had already lost me long before any confrontation. But instead of rage, I felt something quieter and far more powerful, clarity. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to expose my understanding of German. I didn't need to explain what I heard. The truth was enough, and my silence was its own kind of justice. I left him slowly, deliberately, without giving him the satisfaction of knowing which part of his cruelty finally pushed me away. And when I walked out of that house for the last time, taking with me only what I needed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, freedom. Looking back, the most painful part wasn't what he said. It was realizing that I had built a life with someone who never truly saw me. Someone who pretended to love me while quietly resenting the parts of me he couldn't control. But I also learned something powerful. Sometimes the truth arrives in a language we weren't supposed to understand, and sometimes that truth is what saves us. And now, when people ask how I found the strength to walk away, I only say this. The moment you hear someone speak about you as if you're not human, believe them. Because the words people say when they think you can't understand are the truest words they ever speak.